Like we've got a pretty good crew here. So we will get started. Hi, everybody. I am Kelsey with Daxko. I am so excited that you joined us for our first engagement strategy session on preparing your outbound strategy for summer camp. Before we jump in, just a few bits of housekeeping. All participants have been muted to cut down on background noise, but we do want this session to be super interactive and beneficial for all. So feel free to chat us with any questions or comments you have throughout, and get ready to get engaged. So without further ado, we're gonna hop right into our presentation. So as marketers, you are working with fewer resources and time to drive memberships, retentions, and registrations. To achieve these goals, preparation is paramount. That is why we are bringing back our engagement strategy series in 2021. This is something we did back in 2019, and we loved planning all year with you guys, so we are bringing it back for this whole year. And this series is really designed to help busy marketers like yourself prepare and customize their marketing plans for each season ahead so that we're always working ahead, we're getting ready to go, and we are set up for success. Today, I am joined by Engagement Solutions Team Lead Emily and Director of Marketing Christy as they discuss steps to prepare your outbound strategy to drive the highest summer camp registration possible. Following this webinar, we will share with you a strategy sheet so that you can put our recommendations and examples to practice to set you up for success for this year. So if all sounds good, we are going to get started. Christy, I'm actually going to kick it off to you first. Many on this call realize that the impact of childcare is having on recovery from the pandemic. So before we dive into the marketing and strategy planning, can you set the stage with some trends that you're seeing across the movement right now?
Happy to. So if anyone on here has been following our monthly Insights and Impact report, you will know that we recently launched the December report, and childcare just continues to be the star of the show. If you look here at this view of all of 2020, starting in August, we consistently saw huge growth in childcare. We are above what your 2019 numbers were. It trends very similarly. So there are dips when we expect dips, there are increases when we expect increases, but it's above your 2019 numbers. And actually in December, revenue sourced from childcare was 94% higher. And if you look at the report, I think it's like registrations are 148% what normal was in 2019 for December. So there's very obviously a market. You guys know this because you're living and breathing it. There is a market for needed childcare support, and your community is looking for you guys as we are continuing into 2021 with the pandemic continuing to be a presence. And just because the hope is with the COVID vaccine that towards the summer we will have more normalcy. We can't expect there to be normalcy, and in the reality right now is when registrations are happening. So the pressures that your families are facing are still the same pressures of living and existing in a pandemic. So I think there is a really great opportunity to lean into childcare as a huge source of continued recovery in revenue. We're still seeing some normalization in membership and just overall facility usage. But what you guys have done this past year in childcare services for your community has been tremendous. And I can just see that if you guys have a really strategic marketing plan in place, that number will just soar. And I'm excited to talk through that overall plan today.
Thank you, Christy. I mean, I think those trends are a really good representation of the impact that our Ys and Js are having in their community. So appreciate you sharing that. With this in mind, we do want to capitalize on the momentum. So Christy and Emily, I know you plan to walk us through a 4-step process for increasing registrations with an outbound strategy. As you can see on the screen here, those 4 steps are identify audience, nail positioning, determine channels, report, and improve. Emily, I'm going to hand this one over to you. You've worked for almost 5 years now helping our customers to improve their marketing approach. Can you walk us through that first step of identifying your audience?
Yeah. So I would say think about the benefits that you bring to the table, not necessarily the features. You kind of have to change your mindset and think about the people that you're serving. So, what problem are you trying to solve? And who would realistically be interested and need a solution for that problem? Community centers have a unique position, especially now, where they can and have stepped up and solved problems that parents and families face, like childcare. So the ultimate hope would be that they can find something enriching, fun, and safe for their kids. And when you come at it from that position, who would then meet the criteria set for that? So people like members with kids under the age of 16, previous youth program participants, those who've participated in affiliated after school programming. Really think about the people that would benefit from this. And then from there, you can develop messaging around it.
Super helpful. And I guess on that same note, what for everybody tuning in, what are some pitfalls our audience should avoid when creating and identifying the target audience?
Yeah, relating to the audience, obviously casting the net too wide is not great. The only people who should receive a message about summer camp or summer programming are guardians of those prospective participants. Other pitfalls can certainly include reaching out to those who have already registered because they belonged to your original target audience. So this makes the communication seem a little less personal. You do want to make sure that you're trying to exclude the people who have already registered to make it feel conversational.
Got it. That makes total sense. Christy, I'm going to hand this next one over to you. Can you talk us through nailing your positioning?
For sure. So going based off of what Emily has just said, I've seen a lot of really great communication sent out from you all to your members, but I do see some people who are just promoting summer camp and not necessarily speaking to the person who's converting. So having the audience identified first is going to be the starting point for your positioning. So I'm going to take us through a little bit of an exercise. And let's say we're working with the audience, and this is probably the broadest audience I would recommend you going with. So that's active members with children, or active family members with children on the account. So I'm going to have us do a fun little activity. So get ready to chat in your ideas. The first question I always ask myself when I am working on positioning on my own work, or that I work with on our team, is what is our audience trying to accomplish? In this instance, what are our families trying to accomplish? I'm going to give everyone just a couple of seconds to type that in. When we're thinking through that, think, okay, is it to find a summer camp? Is it to think maybe a little bit higher level? Yes, Roxanne sent in a great point. Our families are trying to find engagement for their kids that is safe while they work. Roxanne, you're to a T filling in my activity. Fun activities to do during the summer while providing safe childcare. Patty Richard said child enrichment, growth and engagement. Suzanne said childcare and doing activities without feeling guilty. I think that those are all really great ones. What I did when I was working through this activity before, my answer was to find someone to watch their children over the summer break. That is as broad as we get. The first is like, that is the job they are trying to get done. They need to make sure their child has somewhere to be over the summer break. Ooh, getting kids off of computers, getting away from Google Meetups. I think that's going to be really prevalent this year as we were so forced into virtual. Now that we have a stronger grasp on what it means to bring people back in, I think that's a great point on positioning. Thank you guys for chatting in. So the next step I always ask myself is, what outcomes do you help them achieve? You guys have hinted at this in some of the items you've chatted in. You guys didn't even know you were already answering. So I have some examples here, and feel free to chat some more in, but I have increased engagement with current and new friends. So finding new friends, finding that community, increase enrichment and learning opportunities, decrease risk. So you said a lot about being a safe place, being a place that is taking everyone into consideration. I think a great addition is to like decrease time in front of a screen. I think that will be a big ploy this year in your positioning. So feel free to chat in some more ideas, but these are the first two questions that I always ask myself before I work through how am I going to frame this when I'm sending messaging out. So I walked through kind of ways to put those two together in an example kind of overall positioning doc. And this is something that you all are welcome to take with you, or we can workshop it together on the call, but I'll read it to you guys. You want your children to have the best summer possible. The problem is, between pandemic fears and your busy work schedule, many kids spend their summer glued to screens, missing their friends and craving adventure. Your family needs a place this upcoming summer break where you know your kids are safe and they know they'll have a blast. That's why we're bringing back our summer day camps in 2021. We've taken steps to ramp up our COVID guidelines, no matter what the pandemic climate will be, to ensure all contact is limited without missing any of the fun. This summer, your child will make lifelong friends and memories, learn new skills in swimming and gymnastics, and grow in confidence. What are your thoughts on this overall positioning? I know that one thing that I've seen, and feel free to chat that in, one thing I've seen in some of the messaging that's sent out is just saying, hey, summer camp's open, go register. To an extent that works because you have a loyal membership base, but when you're trying to identify new people, speaking to what they're trying to accomplish rather than just promoting your camp, often will drive lots of conversions when it comes to identifying a new audience. So when you're targeting the participated last year but not this year, maybe that overarching hey, summer camp's open messaging works. This is meant more to identify families who aren't involved in the Y, or they're loosely involved as like a fitness member and need to get plugged into childcare. I think that that is a great opportunity.
Thank you, Christy. That was super helpful to go through. To piggyback off what everybody else chatted in, which is so great to see. We just have to think of what our current circumstances are and be relevant of what's going on in our day-to-day. Christy, there are a lot of components of a robust marketing strategy, as you know, for your day-to-day work. Today, we are focusing on outbound efforts. So before we dive into what outbound effort channels will be going through, can you just set the stage of what we mean by outbound channels?
Yes. So when we think of like what all is marketing responsible for your YMCA, there are a lot of moving components. There is just increasing general awareness of what your Y or J does in the community. There is like providing resources and making sure that you're engaging with your community. There's that mind share component that is vital for making sure that when the time comes that you do an outbound effort, there's quick conversion. So if they've never heard of your YMCA, JCC, or community center, it may take longer to convert at an outbound channel. An outbound channel is meant to be used primarily with someone you already have a relationship with. So now that doesn't mean you could never expand that, but you're going to see the best bang for your buck on outbound channels when you already have some sort of relationship with them. This means you are making an intentional effort to reach out to them. It's not like not just like a news article about your facility, or it's not, there's also like a whole digital marketing component. that we'll talk through on some future webinars around like owning that air cover and meeting people on digital channels. This is a very direct and strategic outbound effort to drive registrations. So that kind of varies on like, okay, maybe I have this mind share component, how we're going to get in the news. I have this, and that's a lot of air cover. I have a digital component, which is around like how we're going to meet people online, on social, on websites, all of that. And then how are we going to be very intentional in our outbound? That's something that people are focusing on right now as registrations are opening. So that's kind of an overview of when we say outbound channels. That's a very one component of a larger marketing strategy.
Absolutely. I know we'll be diving more into the series later of all different types of marketing strategies, but with outbound, Emily, can you share some of the strategy or the channels that our customers should be using for outbound outreach?
Yeah, so email is the first one. This is the simplest way to get in touch with people, either driving traffic to your website or even better, getting them to the registration link. Phone, so outbound phone calls orchestrated by member service representatives or program directors can make a meaningful touch point. This is a great method for progressive programs. So for example, your past sessions guppy swimmers are eligible for the goldfish level. They've already worked with that program director before. It's already a familiar connection. That is a great method there. Direct mail is probably the hardest one to track, but with this, you could certainly use a coupon code to track who registered via mail. AI, so if you're feeling kind of wild, I'll be the first to admit I was intrigued but dismissive at first, but after seeing the conversations that an AI assistant carries, I'm a believer in this. It feels personal, but it allows your team to have other meaningful engagements with your participants. It frees you up to do more fun things. SMS is also an outbound channel. So if you do have an SMS option, I would almost encourage against using that in this type of communication. It is highly personal. So I would say SMS specifically should be used for, confirmations, transactional purposes. Nobody really likes to get marketing texts.
Yeah, I'll be the first one to say I straight up delete marketing texts when I get them. I don't even read them.
Blocked.
Same. This is super helpful. Emily, can you share with like all of us some examples of successful emails sent by our customers that have seen a lot of good success through our outbound outreach?
Yeah, so I did see a good example for this recently. My team was going through 2020 conversion analytics from Daxko Engage, and we had a customer's efforts prove very successful. So Christy, you just pulled up the example I sent over. Thank you. So in this case, this is the YMCA of Greater Birmingham. They sent an outbound communication trying to get people to register for programs. So you'll see all the different sessions there. Second email is very similar, but one thing that I really want to talk about here is the group or the target audience. So you'll see the two rules there are participated in the past 3 years, but has not signed up for 2020. That has not signed up piece is so important because again, you don't want to be messaging people that already registered for your programs because it can make it feel really impersonal.
Thank you. Christy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, we got a question. I think Emily it would be great for you to answer on how are you getting the data to market to these families?
Yeah, so it depends. Ideally, they're already in your database. So it's people that you've interacted with, whether they are members, if they participated in programs in the past. Generally speaking, you can do tabling events to get interest. I've seen YMCA's table at the local malls. I don't know that that's happening all that much right now, but ideally pass lists. Even, if you have affiliations with local schools, so the YMCA of Greater Birmingham partners with local schools. They provide after-school childcare. Those are people that would be very interested in this type of programming. Data purchasing. So if you're already doing that, recommendations for data purchasing. Personal opinion, not so much. Christy, I think I'm going to kick that over to you since you are the marketing whiz.
Yeah, so I mean that is always an option. The biggest fear when I go into like the idea of data purchasing is making sure that it's like number one, you never want to turn someone off that they don't have any knowledge of your company at the first, like this is the first time they're hearing from the Y or the J, and that could turn them off. Whereas if you've done the work from the mind share and the digital component, that would actually drive a higher conversion than reaching out and getting paid lists. That's not to say that they're not used. They definitely are. I just see higher conversions and honestly a bigger bang for your buck if you've done the work on the front end to start them off on the funnel and move them down to the outbound strategy, versus having your first outreach be at that outbound point. Good questions.
It looks like we have one more question. Emily, I'm going to throw this one to you. When you set up an initiative like this, will Engage exclude sending, for example, the email in step 3 if someone registered between steps 1 and 3?
Yes, and that's probably my favorite part of Daxko Engage. So when you look at the group, it's people that participated in last year's, but not this year. So if they do register for this year's program, they no longer meet the criteria and they fall out of that ongoing initiative. So it's a really gorgeous workflow. And in this case, they had more steps after that. So, if they registered between steps 5 and 7, they would fall out and they would no longer be eligible for future communications.
Perfect. I will hold some questions till the end. We are going to move forward just a bit. Christy, I'm going to throw this one at you. So many of our customers are operating on slimmer staff. We all know this. What are some things to consider when establishing accountability on teams to ensure that there is an appropriate follow-up?
Yes. So let me talk through some steps. The first is like the easiest way for you to not have to worry about staff follow-up is making sure your CTAs in whatever outbound strategy are very direct. So if you can empower them to make the decision on their own rather than you having to hunt them down, is going to have the biggest bang for your buck. I see probably pretty consistently email sent out that send a button that have register here, and it takes them to their website rather than taking them to the registration page. You're putting that work then on your members or community members to go find how to register. And that example with Birmingham, I think they did a great job of having the specific buttons by session. If you can get them to that point of purchase as quick as possible, you don't have to worry as much about what your staff is doing to follow up because you've gotten them to that conversion point already. Though I don't think that, and if you have that process in place, you'll see your numbers soar. But that doesn't mean you can ignore anyone else who didn't convert on that first touch point. It actually takes like up to 8 tries before someone actually converts after being asked. So we kind of, we say be direct, we say be prompt, because if someone reaches out and says like, hey, I'm interested, but I have more questions, you want to make sure you're responding to them as quickly as possible, because every day that you let go not answering a question about your session, they're looking at other camp sessions. So you want to make sure you're turning that around. Be persistent. So having a workflow, like Emily was saying, with multiple outreaches, whether that be through Engage, whether that be using an engagement assistant, like she had mentioned with AI, whether that be through task setup that you have with your staff following up with phone calls, you want to make sure that you have multiple touch points in order to convert, because it may feel like you're bombarding your audience, but in reality, you're just hitting them at a point when they may not be ready to make a decision. So making sure that you're being persistent is important. And then being personalized, having an ability to be very custom, be relational, is important. You'll see here only 48% of staff never follow up with a prospect. So if someone reaches out and says, hey, I'm interested, you guys are slammed for time. And that is, and that's just going to kind of increase as we continue on into this world. So one of the things I really love that she mentioned around the AI tool is if you have a large list that you're sending to, being able to identify who are the people that are actually interested rather than spending your time on tracking down the whole large list is going to save your mental health, your team's overall morale, because they'll only be reaching out to the people who you know are interested. They're not necessarily getting turned down each time they call, or they are putting their efforts towards selling. I'm a big advocate that like digital marketing and email and AI they don't always sell, but your team's the best at selling. So you may as well put your team's effort towards engaging with the people who are interested.
Fourth and final step of this process is reporting. This is a very important part for all of our customers to make sure that we are capitalizing and making movement on that progress. So Christy, I will hand this one to you. Can you walk us through some KPIs that our customers should be considering in order to make sure that the appropriate support and follow-up is all happening from leadership?
Yes, totally. I think I think as marketers, we all feel this stress of like, how are we proving that everything we're doing is resulting in revenue? Because ultimately you guys need that cash flow in order to feed back into your community. So you need to justify the efforts that you're doing. I kind of say report, iterate, and improve, because if you're consistently seeing, okay, maybe we sent out an email and there wasn't great conversion, we need to go ahead and reconvert, or maybe let's change the CTA, maybe let's change the audience. I think that is important to continue to do. Another thing is finding ways to tie it to ROI, having a plan in place. Now, if you have Engage, we have tools that you can use to prove that ROI. If not, there are other ways to do it that might just take more time, which is fine. Which is like, okay, if this person has clicked on an email and this person then registered, you can tie those two together, that likely the touch point of that email or the touch point of that phone call was the cause of that conversion. So finding ways to have that return on investment proved out is essential for not only just like proving the work your team is doing, proving on the tools you need of like, hey, I need this tool to increase that conversion that's necessary. And then also help support in like, as you continue to iterate, justify your overall strategy. If you come to leadership and say, hey, this worked last time because we saw X number in childcare registrations. If you come back the next time, and say, hey, we want to do this again, we saw great success, they'll be more receptive of it because you've proved that out from the beginning.
Perfect. And I know not everybody on this call, for those who did rejoin, is a Daxko Engage customer, but for those who are, Emily, can you walk us through some reports that our customers can utilize and that are available?
Yeah, so naturally you'll have your email analytics report and text analytics report, which shows you the basics. I do want to point out the conversion and analytics that Christy mentioned. These are located in Daxko Operations, Custom Reports, Global Reports, Daxko Engage. These will show how many people registered and how much money was generated based off of those registrations. So these are sourced from Daxko Engage initiatives. These reports are awesome at telling you how you're doing and when you should probably pivot. So in this example here, we're looking at the email analytics report. You can see who clicked, who bounced, who unsubscribed. If you click into those initiatives, you can see a little bit more detail on who those people were. So in the case of, oh, go ahead, Christy Brown.
No, go ahead.
In the case of the email that we looked at earlier, that was YMCA of Greater Birmingham, they saw lots of fees generated through those types of campaigns in Daxko Engage.
One thing to note here, and I know that we have someone from Birmingham on the call who's probably like, that number is awesome, which it is. One thing to note, fees generated on that report versus paid will differ because you guys are serving your community. You guys are doing different what am I talking? Scholarships. You all are working on scholarships. You all did a lot of like free childcare for first responders. And so you are able, the benefit of having both of those in the report, or you're saying, number one, hey, this is what it would have been. And this is how much we've served our community, because this is the difference between paid and generated. And this is something we did to give back to our community, which just helps in like your overall messaging. So this is fees generated. The actual paid does differ. And that's because you guys were serving the YMCA or the greater Birmingham area. So we do get questions about that, but that's just another tool in arming you when you go in on reporting.
And I think with that, we have plenty of time for Q&A. So feel free to chat in your questions. We want to make sure that you guys leave here feeling confident and excited, and see how we can support you as we kick off 2021.
So we did get a question. I think Emily would be the best one to speak to this. What are some recommendations on like your favorite group rules when building out your lists for this?
Favorite. Definitely has registered previously. That is a good rule to use. Has not registered for the current year. Always include that. That way, again, you're not messaging the same people twice. Trying to think. Favorite. I don't know. Trying to think of favorite group roles. It's hard to think of that as it relates to programming.
I think one thing that I think I have as my favorite group rule is if you know that there is maybe an area of your member base that's underserved, maybe like a high school that like sometimes does day camp sessions, but this year they're not doing it. Reaching out by zip code, it helps you target that specific area, but like zone for that school. And that also works not just for like summer camp, but like day after school care and anything along those lines.
I do like too that you can differentiate registrations from those who registered and are still in the program versus those who registered and maybe had to drop out, because you can still reach out to those people that dropped out for upcoming programs, future programs.
We did get a question around providing initiative templates for camp.
Yes, we do provide initiative templates for camp. So there is a whole section under Daxko Engage initiative templates that are basically what we've pulled from other customers, things that they did that were successful. We take them, strip some of the branding and plug them back in so you can grab them and use them as you need to.
We did get one question around being able to when someone registers a participant from a workflow, can they be excluded from emails sent to current participants, i.e. weekly newsletters?
Oh, on the wait list.
Wait list. I think, go ahead, Emily. You know this better than I do on this one.
Yeah, that's definitely a great suggestion. I would love to talk to product about that and see where that's at.
We did get a question about the goal sheet. That is something we'll send out in a follow-up later next week. Honestly, what that will just do is kind of take the 4 steps we outlined and give you guys some of the thoughts we talked through, and then actionable steps that you guys can implement on your team with whatever tools you're using. Hopefully they're engaged, but we want this to be a resource for anyone in the movement who needs some marketing thoughts and strategy help. I think we're all good on questions. Kelsey, I'll turn it over to you to round us out.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for attending and rejoining. So sorry again about that little hiccup, but as Christy mentioned, we will be sending up follow-ups for everybody who joined to really put these practices and examples to use. And again, we will be hosting a monthly webinar series to really make sure that you guys are ready for the year, and we're planning season ahead. And so stay tuned on more communications about that. But again, thank you so much for joining, and definitely let us know if you have any questions along the way.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Have a great weekend.